Are artificial intelligences sentient? Are artificial intelligences people? Should artificial intelligences have rights? The answers to those questions flip 180 degrees depending on whether or not we are talking about fiction or reality. But we use the same term for the thing in both cases, and I think that might be a problem. Hey, folks, this is kind of the culmination of a couple of things that I've experienced in the last, I guess, year or so. Pieces of entertainment I've taken in, things I've talked about, responses that I've gotten, and I want to talk about AI, not the technology that we are currently seeing labeled as AI, or at least not about that mostly. I'll come back to that a bit, but I want to talk about more about what AI meant prior to, I don't know, 2022, 2023, when ChatGPT launched publicly. I instead want to talk about our fictional artificial intelligences, because there's plenty of those: droids, medical bots, ship mines, Skynet replicants, murder bots, and Wall-E. Artificial intelligences in our fiction abound. They are a staple of science fiction in many ways. Artificially creative beings, be they ones with physical bodies like robots and androids, be they strictly computer intelligences like, say, Jarvis from the MCU. Regardless, the notion of an artificial intelligence is pretty well ingrained within our popular culture and has been for a long time. And they're not new. Artificial intelligences have been a staple of Star Trek, Star Wars. There was HAL 9000. You can find references to machines with human-like intelligence in 19th century novels. Heck, you could argue that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein depicts an artificial intelligence. You got to bend the rules a little bit on that one, but it's not a million miles off. So this is a long-standing notion and trope, and it's one we love. We love our robots, our AIs, whether it's sassy yet helpful like Jarvis.
Sir, there are still terabytes of calculations needed before an actual flight is a
Jarvis.
Whether it's world-destroying like Ultron.
If you believe in peace, then let us keep it.
I think you're confusing peace with quiet.
Whether it's a little on the flamboyant side like C-3PO.
Don't you call me a mindless philosopher, you overweight glob of grease. Now come out before somebody sees you.
We love these things. And I don't ever want to see them go away. I love a good artificial intelligence character. They can be really wonderful. And the way that they are written about, sometimes having vastly superior intelligence to human beings, sometimes just having a very specialized type of intelligence. Again, C-3PO leaps to mind.
Remember that I am fluent in over 6 million forms of
What are you telling them?
Hello, I think.
Sometimes just being very simplistic, but still having that sense of personhood to them that allows us as audiences to fall in love with them.
Wow.
That was AI up until around 2023. And what AI has become since then is something very different. And this, to be clear, is not the fault of science fiction writers, past or present. It is actually pretty common for those developing our current technologies to attempt to in some way resemble science fiction depictions of the sorts of things they're making. Maybe conceptually the very idea of what it is that they are trying to do, they took from a piece of fiction. Unfortunately, the metaverse is kind of an example of that. Or sometimes they simply will try and replicate the aesthetics because that's what they think the future is meant to look like based off of the pieces of fiction and art that they have taken in. And all that is fine up to a point. There's a few things. The first is, it's worth remembering that in science fiction, even the most grounded science fiction, when a writer comes up with a piece of technology, a new element that was discovered or whatever, it doesn't have to work. It doesn't have to be real. It doesn't have to function the way that they say it does. It's a narrative device.
You have to dig down to the quantum level to find where I have my made-up physics. Nothing can quantum tunnel through astrophage cell membrane
I'm really
because
intrigued
I
about-
said so.
Yeah.
The writers on Star Trek didn't have to figure out the technical ins and outs of the transporter before they were allowed to write it. As a matter of narrative utility, the transporter serves the exact same function as the magic mirror that Dracula has in Castlevania. It's just a means to transport someone from one place for another. They're using a technobabble explanation, whereas fantasy will just wave it off as magic. But it is narratively the exact same thing. So these ideas and these notions that can seem wonderfully futuristic, even ones that are grounded in some degree of actual science, at least at a conceptual level, they don't have to work. So there is often a little bit of an inherent oddity that happens when the people building our technology are taking their inspiration from things that are ultimately narrative devices. But sometimes those narrative devices have really good ideas that maybe are worth pursuing, or again, just a really neat aesthetic. But something a little bit more sinister is happening with the use of AI to describe what we currently have. Now, at this point, AI is increasingly being used as almost a catch-all term. It's being used to describe large language models. It's being used to describe chatbots. It is being used to describe what is creating generative images and sound and video and effects upscaling. And what is or is not AI is kind of moot, because what none of this is, literally none of it, is artificial intelligence as we know it from our fiction. None of it is that. None of these things are self-aware, are sentient, and more to the point, they can't be. The way these things, especially, chat bots and things of that nature, the way that they are built and the way that they behave and the underlying technology upon which they do everything that they do, that technology cannot create an independently thinking, sapient, sentient being. It can, frustratingly, create something that will have the outward appearance of that because it is built entirely around feedback and expectations and what it believes the desired output of what it is doing should be, or the most likely outcome that should be generated. But it's all smoke and mirrors from top to bottom. Yet it gets called AI. I started to become really strikingly aware of this as a problem based off a couple of comments I got on the second video that I did on the quote-unquote AI actress Tilly Norwood. Some people seem to actually take offense to the fact that I called Tilly Norwood a thing and an it, and partway through the video refused to give it the respect of personhood by even calling it she. I myself have actually been chewed out in the comments before when discussing AI, because I would say, like, that's not how these things think. And people have told me, and not incorrectly, these things don't think at all. Don't use those terms. That's the terms that the evangelists want you to use. The thing is, those people are right. But when I got some of those comments, genuinely concerned that I was behaving in a bigoted manner towards the AI, that's when I really saw the intent and the, unfortunately, in some cases, at least with some people, successful impact of tying this slop to the very concept of AI and artificial intelligence by using the same terms that we use from our fiction for their bullshit. Now, as is often the case, I don't have all the examples of comments that I got still available to me, because some of the folks who put some especially bizarre takes would then later, either in that same conversation thread or in other comments, say something that would cause me to just ban them from the commenting on the channel, which, like, I don't like doing. I'm pretty liberal with the ban hammer. I do talk about that, but I also try and be very careful not to ban somebody for simply disagreeing with me. But like I've said before, if they start just trying to start fights all up and down the comment thread or cross a line into something really rude or disrespectful or hateful, yeah, they will be gone, which means that I lose those comments. But there were multiple comments with people at minimum expressing some, let's say, discomfort with my deciding to refer to Tilly Norwood as an it, or my joking use of the current meme phrase for AI created products or things integrated with AI, which is clanker. I actually had someone say that that was an equivalent to the N word, which I asked them to clarify how they came to that conclusion. They never replied to that. So I am going to have to move on from that one, as bizarre as it was. But the fact that people were even feeling that kind of discomfort because that I was speaking this way about an AI, I think in a lot of ways is reflective of the impact of even calling this stuff AI. And this is a desired outcome. The people who make this tech want people to treat it like it's real. Like, let's be very clear. All of the tech bros actually making this stuff, they are fully aware it's not intelligent. They are fully aware it is not independently thinking. And they are also fully aware of all the damage that their development and deployment of this stuff is doing. They're just trying to make money off of it. And they know that it is to their benefit to have as many people in the general populace as possible, if not buy into the idea that this stuff is currently sentient, at least think that maybe one day it could be, and to feel a discomfort when people like me tear into it because, oh, what if in like 20 years it's just gonna sound racist? That is a thought process and a mentality that benefits nobody other than the people making this garbage, this junk, this slop that is destroying the planet, jacking up prices, ruining just so much stuff right now. And just to make the point that the people behind this stuff are fully aware, they have had to start using a completely different term for what the rest of us tend to think of when we hear the term AI. When you, as a consumer, hear AI, you are thinking about the kinds of things we've talked about, that level of artificial intelligence that it's basically a person. What that is, and what that is referred to internally at these companies, is AGI, artificial general intelligence. Now, technically, they didn't come up with that term. It was existing, but it's nowhere near as known in the popular culture. And what the general cultural understanding of what AI is, because of fiction, is actually AGI. But AGI is not a term used in the mainstream. And so these people co-opted the term that is. And while in interviews and whatnot, they'll talk about AI as if it might someday become intelligence, they're fully aware it won't, because they have to use a completely separate term for what that would actually be. And that completely separate term is one that they very rarely say publicly. Because again, they want you to think that their quote-unquote AI is equivocal or will lead to the fictional version of AI, which would actually be approximate to AGI, a thing that does not in any way currently exist. This is very similar to the way things get murky in the discussion of AI in video games, as I discussed previously. Because the people pushing for this, be they ground level, edge bro, tech lords, or be they corporate heads, they want as little distinction as possible between AI being used to generate images and the programming that dictates the actions of NPCs within a game. They want it all referred to as AI so that you think it's all the same thing, or at least interconnected, so you can't remove any single part of it. They want these waters as muddy as possible. That in and of itself is frustrating, but what I actually wanted to ask, and what I've been thinking about, is in the wake of that, and having seen that, do science fiction creators have a responsibility to now be more careful about how they use, if not the concepts of AI, at least the terminology of it? Is there, or should there be, a responsibility of science fiction authors, writers, showrunners, script writers to not play into the hands of the people using the term artificial intelligence for their planet-destroying garbage? I am not going to definitively say that they have some kind of absolute obligation, but it is something that is starting to impact my feelings about artistic works as to whether or not they will make any effort to distance themselves from what AI is now being used to refer to. This notion first came to me when I did a book review last year of a book called Kitty Cat Kill Set, which is a great book. It's one of my favorite books I've read in the past 5 years, and I highly recommend it. But I had a little bit of discomfort at a couple of points in the book because the narrator, which is, yes, a cat, on what is effectively a death ray satellite. That's your starting premise. Go read it. It's great. But her inner monologue, as she makes friends with a lot of artificial beings, including strictly, computer intelligences and things of that nature, there was a couple of phrases of things like people who don't trust these AIs are racist that gave me pause. And I actually ended up looking into the book and when it was written, which thankfully, once I looked into the history of like when it started, because it started as a blog and then it got collected and everything else, it clearly predated things like ChatGPT and this current AI boom that we are supposedly going through. It's a bubble. And when it bursts, so much stuff is gonna, well, like, here's the funny thing about the bubble, since it's artificially propping up so much of the economy right now. The economy's already rotten. It's just a question of when it becomes undeniable that it's very clear to most of us already. Anyways, tangent, other issue. But I actually had the author, Argus, comment on that review. And Argus noted to me that, like, yeah, if I was writing this for the first time now, I'd probably be a lot clearer about what does or doesn't count as an AI. And if ChatGPT had been around, it would have been on the list of dangerous programs to eliminate if it was still around at the point at which my book is set. So Argus was someone who clearly has an understanding of the impact that the way our fiction talks about this can have on the way it is perceived in the real world. Another thing I encountered relatively recently was an episodic video game called Of the Devil. Now, at time of recording, I'm almost done with what is technically the first episode, what is effectively the second episode, because it has an episode 0, which is a free prologue. I recommend playing. It's quite good, even if you don't end up buying the later episodes. But there is some discussion of AIs and artificial beings within the setting. It's a cyberpunk setting. That's not too unexpected. And while there were some things that made me a little bit, because there is this notion of prejudices against artificial intelligence, very specifically, like the idea of the singularity, the fully autonomous, self-aware thing, that is something that is very much dreaded. And like society's kind of built around the idea of like, we ever encounter this, it needs to be destroyed immediately. Now they have plenty of artificial people, quote unquote, they're kind of referred to as ads, but they have limited functionality, be it limitations on their intelligence, what they can physically do, et cetera, et cetera. So there was actually a fear of a true AI in that setting, but sort of that talking about like a prejudice and a fear of AI made me a little bit nervous, but I was kind of calmed by the fact that it actually takes a beat partway into the first episode to clarify that the large language model developments of the early 21st century was a complete technological dead end, and none of the stuff that is within the setting of this game and these episodes of this game is built off that technology. This is all completely different stuff. It helps a lot, and it makes it clear to me, at least, that the writers behind that game understand that their narrative contrivance of artificial intelligence should never be equated with this large language model bullshit. And that understanding and making it clear from creators that they understand that, I'm kind of starting to take as my own personal bare minimum. There was actually a little bit of an odd thing and I didn't bring this up in my video on it, but there was a minor change in Project Hail Mary in the movie versus the book. Because in the movie, the ship has, it's never called an AI, but it has a kind of call and response vocal command computer system that does seem to some degree to learn and respond to things because it identifies Rocky, who obviously was not something the computer was programmed to know about. And so when it says, I think it just says hi Rocky or good night Rocky or something, I can't remember. The fact that it did that at all indicates a learning computer, at least the concept of one. And that is distinctly a change from the book, because in the book, it's actually noted that there's going to be no attempt with the computers on board the Hail Mary to develop anything that would even vaguely be in the realm of artificial intelligences or learning technology or anything like that, because they wouldn't get predictable results out of it. Like, a huge core thing of Project Hail Mary in the book is that this mission needs to be as predictable as possible. It's why they developed this ship to be able to spin and create artificial gravity, so that they can use all the scientific equipment that was designed to be used in standard Earth gravity, which has years of use and they know it works. And that is better than developing stuff for zero G, where they won't have time to test it and they won't know if it'll work as well. Similarly, the computer on board the ship in the book is a very layered and dense algorithm, but it is all based off of if this, then this. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this, unless this, in which case do this instead. It is that sort of thing, and it is very deliberately not something that is intended to learn or develop further, because they wouldn't know for sure what it would turn into and what it would do and how it would react to things as a result of that. And so that was an odd thing for me to catch in the movie, and it made me just a tiny bit uncomfortable, because again, leaning into this idea that, oh, see, it's learning. Now, it by no means spoils the movie. Andy Weir saying some stupid stuff came closer to spoiling the movie. I'm really glad I saw it before any of that happened. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to recommend this video by Jesse Gender. It's actually a really fantastic video, not just for its breakdown of what went on there, but just as a discussion of rage bait and outrage cycles in general. And she brings up a lot of stuff that I think is worth keeping in mind for all of us, myself included. So I do just want to shout out that video. But anyways, regardless, I am at a point where my comfort with a piece of work from a science fiction creator is going to shift in a more positive or negative direction, depending on how they talk about and frame notions of artificial intelligence. Now, is this fair? Possibly not. It's not like sci-fi writers were the ones who wrecked what we call artificial intelligence. They didn't do this. It was done to them and to the concepts that they tend to use within their work. So it can frankly seem, and maybe it even is, a bit unfair to hold sci-fi authors to have some degree of responsibility of dealing with a mess created by a completely different set of assholes. But at the same time, if these tech bro douchebags are using those terminologies to try and bolster and muddy the waters for their awful tech that they are creating, to try and create some degree of sympathy, empathy, desire, or defense of what it is that they are doing among the general public, well, maybe it's just a good idea to distance yourself from the poisoned well that they have created. Not to mention that as much as these tech companies are banking on goodwill for the concept of AI, they are also rapidly burning through that goodwill. When they started calling this junk AI, yes, the public's conception of it was the fictional version. But now, increasingly, more people hear AI and they think garbage that they don't want. And for writers, that's probably not what you want in their head when you're talking about these concepts. That's another reason to maybe move away from the terminology, or at least be clear that what you are talking about is not this. Is it unfair that these tech bros have co-opted artificial intelligence, even though what they have built in no way bears any resemblance to what artificial intelligence is in our science fiction? Yeah, that's total BS. Like, that sucks. But they did it. It's already happened. We can't roll back the clock on that. But we can shift the way that we talk about it going forward. I say we as if I am counting myself among the sci-fi authors. I am an author, fantasy, not sci-fi, at least as yet. But I do think that it is in the best interest of writers who care, because some may not, but those who do, I do think it is in the best interest of their work, of the genre, of pop culture as a whole, that if those terms got poisoned, to move away from them, or to clarify what you mean by them, to be sure that there isn't this crossover, because the entire reason tech bros co-opted the term artificial intelligence is they want to leech off the goodwill, the excitement, the nostalgia even, because of how long artificial intelligent characters have been in our media. They want to leech off all of that for their own financial benefit. And if we can't stop them from doing it, then maybe we cut off that as something that we use as a term to talk about these things in our fiction. These jackasses love to steal whatever they can for the sake of branding and almost nothing else. I kind of mentioned it already with the metaverse. And you know what? I'm pretty sure if it wasn't trademarked, Mark Zuckerberg would have called that nonsense the Matrix. They want to siphon off goodwill and the pop culture understandings of something that we think of as good, because most artificial intelligent characters, like, yes, there's Skynet and there's HAL 9000, but let's be honest, most artificial intelligent characters that we tend to think of in our media, it's Data, it's C-3PO, it's R2-D2, it's the wild robot, it's Wall-E. And even if you link the idea of AI to the villainous things like Ultron and Skynet and HAL 9000, that still benefits them because it makes their tech look more capable and more intelligent and more powerful than it actually is. They would rather you associate with the lovable AIs that you just want to hug and have in your life, but failing that, they still benefit from the association even when it's theoretically negative. What I hope to see in future, and what I can't help but judge a little bit when encountering new pieces of science fiction, be it TV, be it movies, be it books. I am going to judge a little bit if an author is just using the same kind of terms and talking about AI as if it is people, and having notions of AI or robotic life prejudice and not distinguishing it and making clear that it is in no way connected to this, or maybe just starting to use other words for it instead. If they don't do that, I'm going to judge it a bit. Again, probably not a deal breaker, but it's going to be something that goes in the negatives column. Like, it would have been nice to have that assurance that you definitely understand that what you're writing about is not this nonsense and you have no desire to contribute to it. That's kind of the minimum that I'm hoping to find at this point. And thankfully, I do think a lot of writers, again, who care, are stepping up, or at least trying to. And I hope that'll be the standard, because we can't undo the co-opting and twisting of the notion of artificial intelligence that these jackasses have done. But we can try to not feed them further. And I hope people will. Just wanted to kind of work through these thoughts and express them to you and see what you folks think about them. What are your thoughts on any of this? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out with that, like, share, subscribe, those all help as well. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mara G, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Twilord, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, Magdalena, Sir Didymus is my favorite. And to thank some supporters from the lower tiers, thank you to Wordmaker, Lucy Llewellyn, and Beginner's Mind Podcast. And if you want to hear me say your name as well, you can check out the rewards on the Patreon, and there's other stuff besides, and it'll help keep these absurd creatures fed.